So this is the first time of me doing something like this. I don't know if I can change settings on like my mic sensitivity. But hopefully, whatever, it's a start. Honestly, couldn't care less. It's about starting rather than being perfect the first time. But basically, I know that this channel originally started with the idea of me kind of completing textbooks, and I still want to do that. But I think that in addition to that, I also want to kind of just record my progress of learning Torah. I became more observant in my Judaism for the past, I'd say, 2 years, year and a half, I'd say. I grew up religious, and I grew up Orthodox, and I went to yeshiva growing up, and I kind of went off the derech. Now I'm kind of back on, and started out with Daf Yomi, and then Chokol Yisrael, this and that. And I think I just really wanted to, like, I think that I never really learned how to learn on my own. Right? I was always, like, basically listening to one of my Rabbis just, kind of sounding off, this and that. And, like, we learned, like, we would maybe learn maybe, like, 5 dafs over the course of a year. And it was just really slow. And I guess I don't mind being slow. I just really wanted to be Ian. And kind of in that textbook completionist fashion, I went ahead and got a set of Mishnayot that it's the Ateret Shlomo set of Mishnayot, and it has what I feel like is everything. um, it has every Mefarsh, like every Rishon, every Acharon, like it literally like has an entire section just dedicated to let me see, literally just the Vilna Gaon's commentary. Yeah, it's literally like it goes through, like, it has the Mishnah with like all the Mefarshim you could think of. It has, right, Tosfot Yom Tov. It has Rambam. It has Melechat Shlomo, Tiferet Israel. It has obviously Bartanura, and it has like the Torah or style of, like, it tells you which psukim are being referenced, things like that. Whereas I mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, or where can you find it in the Shulchan Aruch, when the Gemaras are talked about, right? And then it has literally the Gura's full commentary on the Mishnah, and then it goes into like more different, just more mafarshim and more mafarshim and more mafarshim, and then it'll even have super commentaries, which are commentaries on the commentaries of certain Rishonim, like Rashi and things like that, which is really fascinating. But yeah, like just the length of the introduction, just in this set right here, which is, we're starting obviously from the very beginning, which is Sed Zlaim, right? And we're going to be starting with Masechet Brachot, but I think that it's going to be a while until we actually start learning any Mishnah, because just the introductions to this book, right, the whole set is above me over there, is 100 pages. So, and I'm a slow learner. Hopefully, as I practice, it'll get faster. But it's never really been my way to, like, I've always been afraid of, like, missing something. Even when I learn Gemara, like, it's not enough for me to just learn, like, the goof of the text, like, the the body of the text. I always have to know, like, what does Rashi say? What does Tosfot say? Right? Like, what does, like, every single thing on the daf, like, what does it mean and why is it there? Right? And it's kind of similar over here, where like that's what I really want to know. Like, why does it put all this stuff there? So, um, and I kind of want to do a little bit of like research on, like, you know, I went to a school that was like based off of the philosophy of Rabbi Soloveitchik, and Harv Soloveitchik, who I really look up to as a really just a gadol, of blessed memory. Um, the way that he, when he said that he learned, and let's say that he went over Rashi, all of a sudden like Rashi would pop up next to him and have a conversation with Rashi, and like I feel like for me to feel like I had to do that, like I want to do a little bit of research on like who are these people. The very first um, Hakdama, the very first introduction here is by, it's from the Sefer Etz Chaim, who was written by, which that Sefer was written by Hagaon, uh, Yaakov Hagiz, of blessed memory. That's that. And he writes, this whole introduction is called Da'achei HaMishnah V'Klalotea. It's like the path of the Mishnah and its general principles. He breaks it up basically like, what is, like, I guess from all of Mishnah, from all of Shas, he went through it and he basically said, okay, what are like the really main ideas and general principles here? And it seems that there are a lot. Um, and he just really goes over like all of the different kind of like, I guess like it's almost like a meta-analysis of like what kind of like techniques are being used and being imposed and what kind of rules can be learned from by just studying Mishnah. And I already kind of like translated the first one, and like my Hebrew is not like the greatest, um, so there's gonna be a lot of me just like tapping away at ChatGPT, but like, hey, what does this word mean? And like, what is its root? And then that's how I learn, and then I'll actually write it down here. But I at least want to get started with the first klal. So I know that's kind of a long-winded introduction of like how I want kind of this series to go. Um, but yeah, okay, let's go right into it. Haklala Aleph, the first principle. אין למדין מן הקללות אפילו במקום שנאמר בהם חוץ. So we don't learn halacha from generalizations, even when in the generalization, even within the generalization, it says chutz, except. What does that mean? It basically says like, if I make a logical statement that like, all um I don't know, maybe like all tomatoes are fruit except da 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 da, da, right? When you follow a train of logic that says that all this is this or all this is not this, except blah 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 blah, and we list a few exceptions to this general grouping, this general ruling, we actually cannot learn halacha from there. It's a pretty big idea. Let's see if he gives an example, but okay. Let's see. He gives an example. B'lesh perek bechol ma'arvin. In the first parak of, sorry, in the beginning of the parak, bechol ma'arvin. I'm assuming that's in Masechet Eruvin. Memra. There's a statement of who? The Rabbi Yochanan, of Rabbi Yochanan. Birish Rashi. So Rabbi Yochanan says some statement. He's not specifying here. Birish Rashi, and Rashi explains, Kol hecha detnan klal, whenever it teaches a generalization, lo amrinan dafkahu deika klal delo dak bemilte veika mile delitnehu ba'ahu klal. Let's break that down. Lo amrinan, it doesn't say dafka exactly. It's not necessarily exact. Lo amrinan dafkahu. It's not like that. Okay, deika, that there is. Klal de lo dak bemilte. Let's say that there is a general principle that is not so precise with its wording. And there is mele delitnehu bahau klal, and there's, let's say, some word or some phrase, I guess, that is not present in this statement, in this generalization. Even in a place where in that generalization, in that general ruling, it says, except for this thing. Okay. The ikalememar, that one can say, the afke lahai v'dai dak b'klalea. One could say that it surely excluded it's explicitly excluded with like fine wording in this general principle. Afilu hachi, even here, lo yalfinan mine de dilma shayar velo ape kol mai debae ein chaf lamed. That means, I have it written here somewhere. Ad kan leshono, until here are his words. Okay. So, afilu hachi, even here, lo yalfinan, we do not, yalfina, I guess, does that mean rely? Yalfina. We do not derive. Yalfina means, so, yalfina means to derive, and where we will not derive. We will not derive from this, mine, the dilma, that perhaps, shayal, velo ape kol mai debai. Because, this is actually what he's saying here, maybe something, perhaps something was omitted that is required. Meaning that let's say, like, let me give you a good example. Let me try to think of a good example. Let's see here. Oh, this is actually a good example. All apples are red except Granny Smith apples. What are the names of those yellow apples are, right? In which we can provide some kind of general principle in saying, okay, great, like the vast majority of apples are red or of a reddish hue, but chutz, except for these specific strains, you know. But it's exactly what Rashi's saying here, right? That even the things that I exclude, right? Let's say if I only exclude Granny Apple, Granny Smith apples because those are green, and whichever one's the name of the yellow ones. Um, there's all these different kinds of apples, right? And from there, because, right, like it's pretty much it's very hard to exclude every single possible thing. We cannot learn from it. We cannot derive a halacha from it. Let's say they give an example. I definitely wrote down what that means. I did, yeah, brings. So, Maite Rabbi Yochanan Raya, Rabbi Yochanan brings a proof. Maha detnan. Maha is, it is, I think. Yeah, from this. Detnan. It's learned, I guess. I think that means it's learned from a Braita. But Perek Kama, the first parak of Masechet de Kedushin. What is the. So, well, this is actually a very good example of how I should use this. כל מצוות עשה שהזמן גרמה, אנשים חייבים ונשים פטורות. Okay, so typically, a positive time-bound mitzvah, men are obligated and women are exempt, right? Like, so for example, me as a dude, I have the obligation to put on tefillin, right? It's a mitzvah to say, right? I'm told, right? I mean, there's multiple places where it talks about tefillin. I'm just talking about the one from Shema. Um, if you look over there, tefillin, you can only do it during the day, right? You cannot wear tefillin. You cannot wear tefillin at night. So because it's I'm told to do something, and there's a certain time period, a window period within the day that I'm allowed to do it. That is called a mitzvah shezman grama. That means that I, as a man, I have to do it. I have to do it on days where I'm required, right? Right now it's Chol Hamoed Pesach, so there are many people hold that you don't, right? Um, for a variety of reasons. I think the main one is, right, like you don't really mix, like it's more Moed than it is Chol, right? So like if as in a holiday that you would not wear tefillin, so too on Chol Hamoed you also don't wear tefillin. So that's an example where I would be, but my wife would not be, right? She would not be obligated to. Technically, right? She could put it on. I mean, there are many halachic authorities that'll be like, well, you really shouldn't, right? Because I mean, at least from what I see, is like the fear is that like as soon as you put it on, like if you like make, especially if you put it on twice, if a woman puts it on like one day after another, then she has to do it for like the rest of her life. She's like obligated to because that's a chazaka. Um, and that sounds like, I mean, if I didn't have to put on tefillin, I wouldn't, right? So, but that's the point. We're talking about the general principles here. Yeah. V'klalahu. This is a general ruling. Hare, like, okay, behold, matzah, v'hakel, the mitzvot aseh shezman gama v'nashim chayevot. Ah, so, but then you'll see that even though this is a general principle, there are outstanding mitzvot that are technically are mitzvot aseh shezman gama that are positive time mitzvot. Like what? Like matzah, right? Women are obligated to eat matzah on Pesach. Right? It's in one of the scrolls in the tefillin. Um, I have it right here. Oh, this is why we don't stack Tehillim like this. As beautiful as a Tehillim is. Okay. Should be in. Okay. בריח החמץ, היום אתם יוצאים לחודש האביב, טה. שבעת ימים תאכל מצות וביום השביעי חג להשם. Right? Very simple. It says in the Torah. And women are obligated in that. Right? And it's technically a mitzvah tazeh shezman gama, right? It's 7 days. Or technically 8 days. Right? 8 days that you are eating matzot. You have an obligation to eat matzah. Especially at the Seder. Or Seders, depending if you're chutz la'aretz. So, also hakel, which, what is hakel? I never actually had a chance to learn what is hakel. What is the mitzvah of hakel? What is the? I'll ask my favorite rabbi, Rav Google. Mitzvah of hakel. Hakel. I know it literally means like an assembly. It is the mitzvah for everyone to go to the Beit HaMikdash during Sukkot, following the Shemitah year, in which the king reads this section of the Torah to inspire faith and unity, reenacting the Sinai covenant. Cool. So that's Hakel. Women have to come to that too, right? Because it's the year after the Shemitah year. Mitzvah Shezman Gama. Okay. And rather, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Elamdim min haklalot. We don't learn from generalizations. Right? That means that as a general ruling, right? Women are not obligated in mitzvot shezman gama. There's a pattern of laws that we see, but it doesn't mean that they are all encompassing, right? So he gave mitzvah deoraita, Rabbi Yochanan, he gave examples from mitzvah deoraita, Torah laws, but we also have laws that are also rabbinic, completely rabbinic. If you look at Purim, women have to hear the Megillah, right? For multiple reasons, this and that, right? Still, according to our rabbis, women are obligated in hearing the Megillah. So, right, even though we learn this general principle, it's actually one of the first general principles we learn in all of Mishnah, right? Because the question is, for example, what's a perfect example of a mitzvah aseh shezman gama? Prayer. right? And this is now where Sephardi and Ashkenazi opinions very much differ. There's a very fascinating kind of um, the opinions that I've read. Um, according to so according to Sephardic halacha, which is what I observe, I'm Moroccan, so I observe the Sephardic halacha. Um, Women are obligated to daven once a day. How does that make sense? Because technically speaking, we daven 3 times a day, right? We daven shacharit, mincha, arvit. Why is it that women have to daven once a day? Because according to Sephardic halacha, praying praying once a day is a mitzvah deoraita. It is a Torah obligation to pray once a day. That means that technically speaking, um, well, you can even argue that technically speaking, shacharit, mincha, and arvit are actually considered to be mitzvah deoraita as well. Because if you hold by the opinion that they were mitaken, that they were affixed by um, our avot, right? Alayhim Shalom, of blessed memory, our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Avraham affixed Shechait, Yitzhak affixed Mincha, and Yaakov affixed Arvit, right? Um, and there's different psukim in the Torah, right? Veshkem Avam Baboker, and that one for Avraham, like that he got up early in the morning. You know, we say that according to our tradition, that means that he prayed. He prayed in the morning, right? So he affixed the daily morning prayer. So, but it's a good question though, right? Do women have to pray 3 times a day? Are they obligated to? Right? It's not about a discussion of can they not? Of course they can. First off, we have free will. You know, but two, it's like it's not like someone's gonna like like drag a woman, God forbid, like out of a big knesset. Chas v'chalila, tfu tfu tfu, not happening. Um, in fact, it's one of the most powerful prayers in all of where we base a lot of the phrasing of our prayers is actually from Chana. But we say in the Sephardic tradition we say Vatit Perel Chana every morning. We actually read her prayer as it was written in Shmuel, in Sefer Shmuel. Um, and the question arises, right? Do women have to pray 3 times a day? Right? Because technically speaking, right, you can only daven shacharit up until a certain point in the day. You can only daven mincha from a certain point to a certain point in the day. And again, there's all these arguments of like when's the earliest you can pray shacharit, and when's the latest you can pray shacharit. When's the earliest you can pray mincha? When's the latest you can pray mincha? And then what is the earliest and latest you can daven alvit? Um, so that's a good question. I would love to learn more about it. So okay. Lighter. Keep going. וכתב מוהרי קארו, הורינו הרב, I'm saying this is הרב יוסף קארו. Let me see what time this. I want to see what year this guy was alive and see if that makes sense. Rabbi Yaakov Hagiz. 1620 to 1670, which that makes sense because Rabbi Yosef Karo, Maran, Maran Bet Yosef, who was the same person, he's just referred to differently. He died in 1575. So that makes sense. Okay, let's see. What does he say? Morenu Harav Yosef Karo. What does he say? He says B'klalei Hagmara Shelo, in the general principles in his general principles of Gemara b'Shem Haran, in the name of the Ran. Who was the Ran? The Ran, was he Ashkenazi? Let me see. The Ran Rabbi. The Ran was Rabbi Harav Nisim ben Reuven of Girona, Catalonia, so he's Sephardic. Okay. Also a physician. Cool. Okay. What's the thing about Jewish doctors? Um, okay. And the name of that line, what does he say? Perek Shvot HaDayanim, in the Perek, in the chapter of Shvot HaDayanim, the oaths of judges, I guess. Dahainu, behold, or let me see if because I always see that and it's like I always read it as like behold, but it really means that is Dahainu, that is. Bedivrei HaTanaim, in the words of the Tanaim, who were the again, I have no idea who my audience is or if anyone would ever even watch this, but I don't really know like what what I should go out of my way to explain or what I shouldn't go out of my way to explain. But the Tanaim were the rabbis of the times of the Mishnah, right? So there's kind of this like quasi linear. There's a lot of overlap, but like pattern of like oral Torah law, which is starts in the Mishnah, which was kind of gathered together by Rabbi Odanasi. That was kind of towards the end of the Second Temple period, over a little over 2,000 years ago, and then that goes into the Gemara, and then from the Gemara to the Geonim to the Rishonim, the Rishonim to the Achronim, and then we go until today. So basically, the rabbis of the Mishnah were called the Tanaim, and the rabbis of the Gemara time were called the Amoraim. Okay. בדברי התנאים, אבל בדברי האמוראים הוא דווקא. So now this is a very important distinction. So originally we said that one cannot derive a halacha from a general ruling. Maran Bet Yosef comes along and he quotes the Ran and he says actually that only applies to the Tanaim. It only applies to the rabbis at the time of the Mishnah. The rabbis at the time of the Gemara, the Amoraim, actually, if they provide a generalization, right, and they say chutz, except for this, this, and this, and this, and that, we actually can derive from that a halacha. And I think I've kind of heard of this kind of term. I've been learning hilchot basar v'chalav, basar v'chalav, and this is idea of like a lo plug, like we don't like nitpick about like we kind of it's like there's certain parts of ruling that we're like lo plug. We're not going to argue about it. Like this is the umbrella of this ruling, and whatever's under this umbrella stays under this umbrella. We're not going to have exceptions here, exceptions there. I'm trying to think of a good specific example. I can't think of one. Okay. I'll try to think of one maybe when I live stream next time. let's go a little bit more, and then I think I'll end it there. Uh, וכתבו בתוספות ראש פרק במה מדליקין. Tosfot wrote in the beginning, in the first parak of, sorry, in the beginning of the parak, bama madlikin, with what do we light? Um, we actually say that every Shabbat. We say that every Friday night. Uh, Sephardim do, I think Ashkenazim do as well, I believe. But I think, what is it? Nusach Sfar, I think they say Kagavna. Um, I mean, I have actually some Nusach Sfar Siddur over here. Also have Ashkenaz. I have everything. Um, I love all Jews. Um, yeah. So, with what do we light? Gabe, in regards to Ematekin lo belechesh, one does not light with, light Shabbat candles with what? What is lechesh? Lechesh. Lechesh. Let's ask Karov Chat GPT. What does lo belechesh mean? Lo belechesh. It's quoting from a Mishnah. Oh wait, honestly, I feel like he probably explains it here. במוקי בגמרא, בשוחד הארזה באמרינתא דאית ואם תאמר המסיפה שם אינן לכל היוצא מן העץ אין מדליקים בו אלא פשתן. Okay, so yeah, it's I guess it's like the fibrous like part of, it's referring to some part of cedar wood. How's that cedar wood? It's a cotton like wool like fibrous substance associated with the cedar tree. Yeah, shochad alza. Okay. That has in it. Oh, okay, that if it has in the candle, it has this fibrous wool substance. You can't like use that to light a. Shabbos candles. And if you will say ha-mesefa shemina lekol yotzi min ha'etz, in fact, later in the in the later in the perek we learn kol yotzi min ha'etz and malikin bo. Anything that comes out of trees, we don't light with it. Ela pishtan, rather than, except for pishtan, I think is flax, right? Or is pishtan charcoal? What is pishtan? Pishtan. Flax, that's what I thought. Pishtan is flax. Pecham, I think, is charcoal. פשתן. ויש לומר שאין למדין מן הכללות אפילו במקום שנאמר בהם בחוץ. I see. So it's like, hold on. Why would the in the spelling we're talking about what can we light? What can we use, I guess, either as fuel for the Shabbos candles, and like what can we use for the medium, right? Some people use like different kinds of wicks and different kinds of oils and different kinds of things, right? So why would it say that it's specifying this wool-like substance, this cotton wool-like substance that comes from cedar wood, when it literally says that later in the parak it says kol hayotze min ha'etz, we say en madlikin bo. Anything that comes out of wood, we don't light with it, right? Why? Because of this idea that we do not learn from generalizations, right? One would think, right, that like it should be included, but no, went out of its way. I guess, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me of why. I mean, okay, great. We don't learn from generalizations like that. Fine. But it still doesn't make sense. Well, then why would it? That's the reason why it specifically uses that example. It but then it'll say it doesn't make sense. I'll have to ask maybe one of my rabbi friends tomorrow. See what he says. But I'll leave it there. It's kind of went on long enough. 45 minutes. I think it's good a time. That's a good amount of time to study Mishnah. And may this learning be in the merit of for the raising of the soul of my dear mother who passed away recently. לעילוי נשמת עופרה בת רינה, שתהיה נשמתה צרורה בצל החיים. So that is a little bit of how I learn, and I decided to learn because I decided to start recording my learning because, to be honest, I feel like it's kind of the only one. Like I feel like I learn better when I'm feel like I'm talking to someone. And this is kind of a way of doing that. And two, I think it just incentivizes me to learn. If I know that I'm sharing this with other people, even if probably no one's gonna watch it, I feel like it incentivizes me to kind of stick to it. And it's kind of it's like thinking now it's like 1 something a.m. Yeah, it's 1:18 a.m. in the morning. Um, I don't know, I just couldn't fall asleep and just felt a chuka to learn a little bit. So thank you for anyone that went along with my ramblings. And um, you know, if this at all, again, I'm doing this for me, as a way to help me be more consistent and stick with my learning and my way of learning. But if this, I think I'm gonna like phrase this as like learn with me, like come learn Mishnah with me. Um, and I'll like, I mean, I'll probably organize it by like which sefer I'm learning and which parts I'm learning, and kind of use that as like a way to organize these videos. But if it inspires you to do any learning at all, if it inspires you to just sit down with me and to also learn yourself, then that would make me really happy to hear. And I think that learning Torah has really unlocked my ability to be close to Hashem, and I really think that it's like every time I learn Torah, it's like I understand why why Chazal say Talmud, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. It lists all these beautiful mitzvot, but at the end, like, if you have all the mitzvot on one side of the scale, and you just put learning Torah on the other side, it like outweighs everything. Because I don't know, it's like from the learning of Torah that it really honed my ability to follow the mitzvot, and it's good stuff. So thank you for listening to my rambling, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, night, etc.